Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the United She Stands podcast. Today, we have two people running for state senate for you, and full transparency, they are running in districts that are probably considered a long shot, but they are running and they are doing amazing things, and you're going to get to hear about it. And as we like to say, no seat should go uncontested, and we run elections because you never know what's going to happen. So we're really excited for you to hear from both of them today. The first one up is Scott Charland. Scott is running for Ohio Senate District 19, which includes Delaware, Coshocton, Holmes, and Knox Counties. Scott received his bachelor's degree from Florida State University and his master's degree in education from the University of Alabama Birmingham. Scott is a former national and state champion powerlifter and has been a strength and conditioning coach for over 25 years. He currently works in healthcare as a manager of human performance. Scott is running to make Ohio's public schools stronger, to implement stronger protection of Ohio's natural resources, and to enact strong working class economic policies. Scott believes that politicians have lost sight of who they should really be serving, the working class and underrepresented, and have instead focused almost entirely on helping the wealthy and large corporations. Scott is active in the community and serves on the Orange Township Parks Advisory Committee and is an active volunteer for the Ohio Nature Conservancy, Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks, and Friends of the Lower Olentangy, and the American Red Cross. Scott and his wife, Tanya, have been married 25 years and have a son who attends Ohio State University and a daughter in the Olentangy School District. Scott is so fun to talk to. He's just has really creative ideas for how we could actually improve Ohio, regardless of the gerrymandered state we're in. So enjoy this one.
Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, ladies. Really appreciate this. Big fan. I'm excited to get going here today.
Yeah, we're so happy and excited that you're a big fan. I remember our first email exchange. You were detailing some of our recent episodes. I'm like, okay, he really has listened. So we appreciate your dedication to the podcast.
Yep. I'm working through the back issues right now. So I'm up into the 2024s or 2020.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'm always so embarrassed when people go back to listen to our old episodes. I'm like, maybe just don't. It's fine.
Yeah, fair warning. We have improved a lot. So starting with our most recent ones and going backwards, it could be quite the journey for you. But nonetheless, this is your time to shine on the podcast today. So let's start with talking a bit about you. Sure. Who is Scott Charland, and what was the moment that pushed you from coaching into running for Ohio Senate District 19?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So as that profession, I work with collegiate athletes. I was a strength and conditioning coach at Ohio State from 2005 to 2008. And then from there, my wife and I kind of worked around the country, to Missouri, to Pennsylvania, to Indiana, finally back to Ohio. Been married 25 years, have a son that is going to be a junior at Ohio State, daughter that's going to be a senior at high school in the Olentangy School District here. And really, it's kind of started a long time ago. So what initially got me interested, or when politics kind of smacked me in the face, was unfortunately the Newtown tragedy. My son was in kindergarten at the exact same time. And I remember listening on the radio and coming home and not being able to imagine my most valuable resource not coming back home to me. And so it shook me. I'll be honest with you. And unfortunately, in a situation like that, you kind of think, well, at least now something's got to get done. All right. This is a horrible tragedy, but we can't look past this. Something has to be done. And nothing happened. And so it got me thinking, what in the hell is going on here? How? And then you realize the NRA buys politicians, and these folks don't actually work for you and I, and are trying to solve the problems you and I have. They're out for themselves and their donors. And so it kind of started from there, getting involved little by little, got really involved in Bernie's campaigns. And then kind of like a lot of people, I think in 2024, after that election, it just was kind of like, all right, I got to do something more than just go out there and vote. And so I live in Delaware County. So I went to the Delaware County Democratic meeting after the election, and there was a group there from an organization called Lead Ohio. So Lead Ohio is a group that essentially does training for individuals that want to become potential candidates. And so I did that in the spring of 2025, got more involved, met people, this, that, and was not planning to run, as I told you ladies at the Flip the 12th. But the individual that did run for the Democratic nomination for Senate District 19 ran unopposed. She won 2 weeks after the primary. She was diagnosed with a health condition that prevented her from continuing. And so then the Democratic Party chair reached out to me and asked if I would be interested. And really, it's just a chance of a lifetime. It was not something I could pass by. I always wanted to run thinking, hey, township trustee, something much smaller, but hey, when opportunity knocks, you got to answer. So it really worked out. My kids were more grown. I wasn't dragging my son to baseball games. My daughter could drive. My work schedule is a little slower in the summer and the fall. And in all honesty, and I will talk about this one a little bit later, there weren't a lot of people looking to dive into a district that's 27-point Republican. So all those things worked in my favor, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad you're running. We believe no seat should go unopposed. And so to your point, I know it's a plus 27 Republican district, thanks gerrymandering, but just thank you for stepping up to the plate and running. Really appreciate it. So let's dive into some stuff here. Over $1 billion a year, as we know, is being redirected from public schools to private school vouchers with little oversight on how those private schools operate. We talk about this a lot on the show. Walk us through what your plan would look like to fix something like that, and what would you actually change about the current process?
Yeah, so this is everybody. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And so, really, the first thing we need to think about, ladies, which I'm speaking to the choir here, but we need to flip 5 Senate districts to break the Republican supermajority. However, even if we break the supermajority, they're still going to have a majority, right? We can break the supermajority. That doesn't mean all of a sudden we're in charge. They're still going to have a majority. So everything I'm going to talk about here is things we can do outside of the legislature, because let's be honest, they have no interest in helping the people of Ohio. The Republican legislatures just want to punish us. And so flip 5 Senate seats, break the supermajority. And again, the other thing, Amy Acton has to be governor for any of these things to happen. So put your dreaming glasses on and say, okay, Amy Acton's governor, here's some things we can do. So with school vouchers, first thing you said about there is accountability. There's actually Senate Bill 443, which is called Take the Dough, We Gotta Know Act. And this is somewhat bipartisan, but basically require private schools to get audited every year, publish report cards, and have students take the same tests as public school kids. All right, that's a start, but that doesn't help us get the money back from school vouchers. At least some people on the Republican side see that a lot of these private schools and charter schools are just a total scam. But what do we do about the voucher money? Again, I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm just going to bring up one thing. There's 5 different types of school vouchers, one specifically for autism. There's John Peterson for special needs. There's one specifically to Cleveland. There's Ed Choice, which is based on your school district performance. The one we really need to, which I don't like either, but the one that really needs readjustment is this Ed Choice expansion, which that's basically the universal school voucher. And so just again, in 2024, 2025, Ohio gave out 69,000 new vouchers when that Ed Choice expansion was allowed. Only enrollment of private schools only grew by 3,700. So we can see that those vouchers, they're just subsidies for kids that were already going to private schools. So what do we do? All right. And this is where I love your show, because I listen to your other candidates on here and they take light bulbs off in my mind. So I don't know if it was Rose or Kara or it was somebody, but they had mentioned, we voted to have reproductive rights enshrined in the Constitution in this state. Overwhelmingly. Wasn't close. But every day since then, Republicans have thrown up roadblocks and hurdles to limit access, to make access more difficult. Let's do the same thing with school vouchers. So right now, school voucher, you go to the private school, you get accepted, you fill out their paperwork, they send it off to the state, and you get your check in the mail. No way. I think for you to get a school voucher, you should have to apply in person, parent and child, in Columbus, Ohio. And what that's going to do is slow down all these rich families that just get it. Now, I've heard that on the campaign trail. Hey, my brother sends his kids to private school in Cincinnati. They didn't want a school voucher, but the private school said, no, you got to get it. We get more funding that way. And so they signed up for it. And so by making people have to actually show up in Columbus, bringing their kid, kicking and screaming and crying, 2-hour drive, a lot of rich families just aren't going to deal with the hassle for what they have. So I think we can do that and just limit the access and the availability of those vouchers. I was at an event likewise with Allison Russo, Secretary of State candidate. And she said, hey, my opponent has said, I want to make it impossible or next to impossible to vote by mail. Well, I want to make it impossible or next to impossible to apply for a school voucher. And there are plenty of ways, again, by having to actually apply in person. And maybe that office is only open Monday through Thursdays, noon to 4. And, all those kind of, there's ways to do it. And again, ladies, and I tell this to all the, speeches, don't tell me the Republicans wouldn't do the exact same kind of thing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They've been playing dirty like this with voting, with to your point, abortion access, to all the things that they don't like forever. Yep. We can play, we need to be doing the same thing.
We need to bring that same kind of energy. And again, vouchers probably aren't going to go anywhere. There's the lawsuits and this and that, but good luck with that. So let's just cut the legs off of it through the application process. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I have a gigantic will to stop school vouchers and give that money back to the to the public schools where it belongs.
Yeah, I love that. So can you just clarify real quick? So that wouldn't need legislation. That's like something administratively or through agencies or something.
I don't remember there being any legislation passed on that. This is just going to be on the website and here we go.
On the website application. Okay. Yeah. So it's just,
again, stop us.
Yeah.
Don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness. And again, one of the things that I think Democrats struggle with is when they get power, they're afraid to use power. Yeah. Now, again, Amy Acton has to be elected governor. Like, this is going nowhere with Vivek. But where there's a will, there's a way. And you're telling me we can't find a way to change that application process? Hey, you know what? I think in the application process, there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. So instead of doing this online, we're going to have to do this in person, and you're going to have to come down here, and you're going to have to show me your ID. All right. And your child is going to have their school ID with them too. And I'm sorry, but we just got to stop all the waste, fraud, and abuse. How many times?
I love it.
That nausea.
To your point, I mean, it shouldn't be harder to get health care than it is to get a voucher. So what do you have to do for Medicaid? Maybe we just make the same hoops, right? Like, I think you have to be in person twice a year. They're trying to make it, like all the things you just said. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And again, we don't need approval for this. I don't think, we just do it.
Yeah. And I think I just love how realistic you're being. You're like, okay, yes, we need Amy Acton, but that we're still going to be operating in a majority or like in a minority, hopefully not super minority, but you are already thinking like, yeah, we can't introduce like a Medicare for all bill in Ohio like that. We can't do that currently, even if the election in November goes extraordinarily well. Mm-hmm. I just love how realistic you're being and just playing the same game that the Republicans have been playing for the past 15 plus years with, having a trifecta of the Ohio government. So I love this energy, Scott. So I feel like you're also going to have similar energy with this next question about data centers. Mm-hmm. So we know now that Ohio has over 200 data centers, and you've talked about the strain that puts on land, water, energy, and nearby residents. This is no news to anyone listening. But what have you heard from people in your district that convinced you that this needed real limits and not just a tax reform?
Yeah. And so same thing. I mean, it's truly the one it might be the one unifying issue of our time. Again, kids can get shot in kindergarten and we're like, well, we just got to have the second, but hey, data centers is the one thing, left, right, red and blue can both agree. Nobody wants these things. And so when I go around and they're saying about, what are we going to do to stop them? These companies have so much money, this and that. And again, where there's a will, there's a way. So think of this same thing, when we passed the reproductive rights, we also passed legalized cannabis. Where are all the cannabis dispensaries? They were supposed to be everywhere and they're not. So essentially the state has regulated the cannabis industry into almost nothing. Green energy. We can regulate green energy and windmills and solar farms into non-existence. We can do the same thing with data centers. Now, Amy Acton has her plan of the moratorium, and maybe she can go about that without Republican help. All right. But again, you kind of saw this hit a crescendo this summer when the Senate was back in session and we're going to do something about this and blah. And we just couldn't quite do it. Well, surprise, surprise. And so if the governor can do something about this unilaterally, great. But last resort, what I would propose is you declare a state of emergency. Mm-hmm. And so the governor can declare an energy shortage emergency. And that puts it in 90 days. And what I would, again, if I was governor, but what I think she can do is, hey, y'all either figure this out in the next week, or I'm going to declare a state of emergency and we're just going to shut this down for 90 days. Now, you may have seen in the Ohio Capitol Journal today, 344,589 Ohio households had their electricity shut off in the last year. So 350,000 Ohio households had their energy shut off in the last year because they couldn't pay their bills. Now, that's just a household. How many people live in each household? I mean, if you take an average of 2.5, which it's probably more than that, but figure 1 million people in Ohio had their energy shut off last year. The state of emergency was declared for COVID. That probably didn't affect 1 million people in the state of Ohio. So don't tell me we can't, enact an energy shortage state of emergency. And in addition to that, all right, governor appoints the board of PUCO. All right, those people aren't elected. All right, she appoints that board.
Can you just give the PUCO acronym real quick for folks that maybe don't know?
Public Utilities Commission. Yeah. So basically, who regulates the energy and all that kind of stuff in the state. But she appoints those board members. She will appoint those board members, and they have a lot of power, kind of quote unquote, to determine what's going on with electricity usage and consumption. And you get the right people on that board, I bet we can slow down what's happening to data centers, or again, make them produce their own energy. And that's kind of like, hey, Vivek's pan, hey, if a data center comes to town, they should have to produce their own energy. Well, great. Now I got a data center and a power plant in my neighborhood. Like, that's the last thing I want. I just took 2 steps backwards. All right. So this energy needs to be clean energy. And again, I just think by declaring a state of emergency, like, if that's what it has to come to, then that's what it has to come to. And I'll tell you this, ladies, if Amy Acton on, her first day said, hey, y'all got a week, figure out the data center issue, or I'm going to declare a state of emergency. And if they don't, and she does declare a state of emergency to stop any new data centers for the next 90 days, who do you think the most popular governor in the state of Ohio history would be?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, this is an issue I think some Democrats, you included, have come out very strongly on, but we aren't seeing Democrats as a whole come out strong on this issue. And it's interesting. I can't remember if we talked a little bit about this at the 12th, but it's like kind of frustrating because it's, to your point, it's like a unifying issue. Like, it's very popular that people do not want these data centers.
Yeah. And I get it. It's a difficult issue for the Democrats because we're so pro-union. And they do create a lot of union jobs. Destroying Ohio creates a lot of union jobs. But I feel like, if we can allocate our resources to build schools, build bridges, build roads, build, put green energy on the roof of every school. You want to help schools out, like we said before, put green energy on the roof of them all and make them generate their own electricity so they don't have to pay utility bills. There's 1,000 other things we could do with the great men and women in our unions across the state besides just building data centers that take our natural resources away and then send the profits out of state.
Yeah, exactly. Affordable housing. To your point, there's so many things. That's all I've ever wanted Democrats to say. So thanks for coming on the show and doing that, Scott.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just it's very similar situation. So I have Coshocton, which is closer to Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and you go around there and you read a little bit about the history. It's very similar to what coal mines did. Hey, we're going to come in, we're going to destroy your state's natural resources. We're going to exploit your workers. We're going to steal all the profits. Then we're going to leave you holding the bag when we're done. That's data centers.
And that doesn't even touch on the environmental, the impacts or the health impacts. People's health is impacted by these things when the environment's impacted around them. So,
right. And so there's, again, if we can't all get on board to regulate them, which I think we've shown we probably can't, then boom, state of emergency, and here we go.
Yeah. I love this creative thinking. I love it so much. Me too. All right, we're going to talk about minimum wage now. This is something we kind of briefly touch on sometimes, but we don't always really get into. So I think you've spoken directly to this issue, and we want to hear it from you. So Ohio's minimum wage, as people might know, just ticked up to $11 an hour in January. You want to get that up to $20, and then you also want to index it to inflation going forward, which, I mean, doesn't seem like a crazy idea here, but... So walk us through just the case for making that jump now, and how do you bring small businesses along? Because I think that's always the concern or pushback, you hear.
Make the case to give people more money. I mean, have you been to the grocery store in the last 2 days? Did you fill your tank up of gas? Yeah. The prices have just outstripped what people are earning so grossly. So we've all probably seen this, in the past couple weeks, CNBC rated Ohio the #1 state for business, right?
Yeah.
Have we seen this? And then U.S. News and World Report this summer rated Ohio as the 42nd best state to live in.
Yeah. I think it tells the exact story of what our politicians have been doing for the last 30 years. So
I'm going to tell you that's probably not a coincidence. Okay. For too long, tax breaks, no environmental, we've let business, no environmental regulations, poor wages. We've let business just run roughshod over the state of Ohio and the workers of Ohio. And I'm running for office for the workers of Ohio. I'm not running for office to placate the rich and the big corporations. And so what I always say is, if the success of your business plan is predicated on paying your employees starvation wages, it's not a business plan, it's an exploitation plan. All right. And I don't want those company, those small businesses or any of them coming along with me. Like, they're not going to vote for me. I don't care. All right. I'm not here to serve them. They don't need to come along for me. So again, I could introduce, legislation to raise minimum wage. It'd be a waste of the paper that it's written on. So one of the great things about Ohio is a citizens-led ballot initiative. Literally anything good that's come out of Ohio politics in the last however long has been through a citizen-led ballot initiative. So again, imagine this. In November, I'm able to flip a 27-point Republican district. All right. That probably gives me some power, some credibility, some notoriety. And so what I do with that is I go around the state and I lead the charge to get that on the ballot. And I'm having, hey, come meet Scott, the guy that overturned a 27-point district, sign the thing, sign the ballot to get, increase the minimum wage from 11 to 20, the tip minimum wage from $5.50 to $10. And we get it on the ballot. Again, legislature can't do anything about it. We do citizens-led ballot initiative, which I would lead. Again, in the dream scenario where I was elected, all I'm going to do in Columbus is go down there and vote no on all the stuff. And so I'd have time on my hands and I could kind of barnstorm the state as the guy that flipped this district and blah, blah, blah can talk. Anyway, and so I lead that initiative and try and get it on the ballot in either 27 or 28. And the businesses that aren't for it, the businesses that are against paying their employees a wage that they can live on, to hell with you.
Yeah, I just want to say too, we have the infrastructure here in Ohio for citizen-led initiatives. We have incredible organizations all across the state, like local orgs, that have done, to your point, reproductive rights, the marijuana, gerrymandering. How many times have we got to the ballot? I know we didn't win this last time, but, just to get on that ballot is a lot of work. And so there's just so many organizations that, I'm sure would be happy to be thrilled to work with someone on an initiative like this. So love that.
And how many times have these ballot initiatives really shown the true feelings and the true values and views of Ohioans? We are obviously not represented well. And it's abortion and marijuana being the two that, come to mind. We passed both of those with 57%. Flying colors. Obviously there is a mismatch. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like this being on the ballot had a ton of support. And this is another slap in the face to Republicans in publicly held office in Ohio.
Yeah. Again, the last thing Republicans want to do is see working families succeed. So we just do an end run and go around it. To your point, Sarah, I was at Ohio State from 2005 to 2008. So I voted for Obama in Ohio. Won with flying colors. I come back, 15 years later, and it's like, the hell happened here? This place has been stripped for parts.
Yeah, that's such a crazy perspective you have. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. And so, but again, I come back, and that first year I'm back, we passed reproductive rights and cannabis. And it's like, what? And this isn't matching up. And my family will say, oh, Ohio's really red. I'm like, no, Ohio's really gerrymandered with a voter turnout issue.
Yep.
But Ohio will vote for progressive policies. It just won't vote for progressive candidates. And part of my goal is to really bring those walls down. There's a uniquely, I want to talk about one thing. So Knox County is in my district, which Mount Vernon is the seat of that. I was asked to speak in front of the Mount Vernon City Council about flock cameras. And so they wanted to bring more flock cameras. The sheriff wanted to bring more flock cameras into town. He spoke for them. I spoke against them, along with a bunch of other citizens, obviously. And for my social media, this got more views and likes and comments than anything I had done before. And like a week or two after it, everything settled down. Somebody liked it. And I was just like, well, who's still looking at this thing? And I went to the guy's Facebook page, and it was my speech at the city council. It was an RFK Jr. conspiracy theory video. And then it was a Joe Rogan thing. And so that was a really unique thing where, and I don't I don't have like Democrat Scott Charland. I just have, hey, I'm a, normal guy just like you and me. I'm raising my family, been married 25 years, got 2 kids, lift weights. Like I'm just a guy. And it brings those walls down and hopefully it gives permission. And when they see somebody like me that looks like them, it gives them permission to vote Democrat.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Like, there are people, right, that are very like, their identity isn't a political party, but there are a lot of people who vote kind of based on cultural vibes, right? Like, they were really into Joe Rogan and Trump went on that show and like, you know what I mean? So, to your point, like, where we always kind of think, I think, especially as people who live and breathe politics, we think of like Republican, Democrat, and like along that spectrum, but people don't think of themselves that way. Like most people don't. So I really like that example.
Yeah.
100%. Again, we get so just tunnel vision into politics, and every Sunday I go out and knock doors, and it's like, oh, what issues? And they're like, oh, well, I don't really know, and well, not like, are you serious? What are you talking about? You don't really. It's like you want to shake them and be like, come on, man, bang, wake up. But they're just on the peripheries and they're living their life. Just like, I was raising 2 kids, living my life. I'm busy with work and paying the bills and this and that. I ain't got time to focus on all this stuff. But again, it's our job to get out there and make them aware of the issues. And then, just send somebody in like myself that just looks like everybody else. It's a cool guy, got a beautiful wife, high achieving kids, lifts weights. Like, this is just a normal guy.
I love it. So we've talked a bit about your district, 27 points on the right. So you have quite a battle, but honestly, like I feel like you are perfect for this exact battle. Can you talk a bit more about your district? How long has it been a Republican held seat? Yeah. And what does a win look like in this election? Obviously, we would love for you to win, and we are rooting for you, and we are manifesting that you're going to win. But what looks like progress in this district for you, and how are you defining success for this campaign?
100%. So this district is the poster child for gerrymandering. So in 2018, this district was Delaware County and the top half of Franklin, like down to North Campus. So a big chunk. Wow. Of Franklin County.
Oh my goodness.
It was a 2-point district, 50 to 48. All right. Obviously too close for comfort. So 2022 comes along. It gets gerrymandered. So all of Franklin County gets taken away. It's still Delaware. But again, Delaware is 50-50. Fastest growing county in the state. The southern half of it, very progressive. Basically you graduate from Ohio State, you move to Delaware County. So to neutralize that, take Franklin County away, and you add Knox, Holmes, and Coshocton. And so 3 very rural, very red, not a lot of population out there, but in the 2022 election, those were 75-25 Republican Democrat districts. And so we feel like, Delaware's about 50-50. We're hoping this year it flips blue. Had a lot of events with David Pepper and hear them talk. They feel if Delaware County goes blue, they win the election. And so for us, we're not going to win Knox, Holmes, and Coshocton, but we got to bring the margin. We can't lose by 50. If we can bring those margins down to 65-35 with what we feel we can do in Delaware, boy, you got to squint to see it, but it's there somewhere. And so what success looks like for me, hey, let's take this 27-point district and let's get it under 15. If we can take Senate 19, 13, 14 points to the left, it would be hard to imagine a scenario where we do that and Amy Acton and Sherrod Brown don't win their elections. And if we go to bed November 3rd, if I go to bed November 3rd and I've lost and Amy Acton and Sherrod Brown have won, you won't be able to wipe the smile off my face. So again, and to your point in the beginning, I think it was Sarah, just having somebody on the ballot. These districts are gerrymandered to depress and suppress people from even wanting to run because what the hell, why am I even doing this? It's a waste of time. So just somebody getting on the ballot is a victory. Maybe, getting some of these ideas out into the ether and somebody else picking up on it and saying, well, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard of. Doing those kind of things. Again, bringing some walls down. The flock cameras that we talked about in Mount Vernon, the sheriff decided not to do it. Like that's a win right there. Being on the ballot is a win. There's all these little things. And I think a lot of people, a lot of great candidates are afraid to run because they don't want to let everybody down. But it's so much pressure. And, so we end up with some, person that's not as good of a candidate because we're just afraid to run and set somebody down. And you've had so many great candidates on your show. And after it, I'll look like, God, I hope this guy won. They lost. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have run. run again.
Right.
Bring it back. You got that guy from Cleveland with the wife with the Chinese restaurant, and he was
Yeah,
fantastic.
Carl.
And and the progressive candidate that went against the really entrenched Democrat Senate candidate in Columbus.
Jesse Baker.
Yeah. Great. I mean, those people are fantastic. You cannot say that their elections were lost. There were many wins along the way. They're still out there. Whether I win or lose, the fight continues. I'll be out the next day telling you how bad data centers are and that school vouchers suck and all these things. So I ain't going away.
You can still lead your ballot initiative. You can still lead your ballot initiative.
Yes.
You
still
can make
do all
that
kinds
happen.
of things. And again, I didn't run. I'm not running for office to have power. I'm running to make a difference. I can still, not as big a difference, but I can still make a difference as just Scott Charland, the guy, and whether I'm Scott Charland, the senator or not, I still can make a difference, and I'm going to make a difference.
Yeah, I love that attitude. I think two things about running, to your point, in a district like yours. One, we shouldn't leave them unopposed. We talked about that, but I think just to make that more clear for maybe some folks who don't realize, we're forcing Republicans to spend money there. Whether it's a little bit or it's not, it's still money that they wouldn't have even thought twice about spending if their seat was completely unopposed, right? So we're forcing them to at least pay attention and spend time or energy or money or both there. And then second, back to your point, you might run again in 4 years, and now you have all this name recognition you've been building. You have all this infrastructure from people who've been volunteering and getting excited about your campaign and showing people that there's another option in a district like that. And so, I think Krista Allison ran before. We had Krista Allison on. She's in the Canton area. She ran before, and she was really close last time. And she's she just used all of that building to run this time. And it's that's the kind of stuff we have to do. We can't just. Yeah, Jared ran again. Sarah has Jared's run. Jared Christian ran before. He's running again. It takes time to build this stuff. This stuff doesn't happen overnight, and someone has to be building it. And so,
100%.
I'm just back there.
Yeah, and to your point about the money, you can look at every candidate's election finance report. So many candidates, my opponent's one of them, they get tens of thousands of dollars from other candidates inside the state. Because they just didn't have they raised some money. They didn't have a competitive election, so I'm going to give it to somebody else. And it's hey, get these guys off my back and provide me some cover so that they have to actually spend money in their district instead of funneling it down here. So, just fighting across the board is victory. Don't think that the only way you win is by getting the most votes on November 3rd. There's a lot of victories that can be won before then.
Yeah, I love that perspective. All right, Scott, we're going to start to wrap here. I'm going to ask you a two-part question. As you know, because I know you're a listener, we always end with this. What gives you hope in this moment? And then for folks listening, can you just let them know how they can best help your campaign right now? Yeah.
So again, a couple of things really give me hope. After the 2024 election, we were all really down. But in Columbus, there's no Kings rallies, but then there's also these protests every Saturday outside the Tesla dealership in Easton. And I went to one. Again, it was still in the winter, February, March. And this was a no Kings rally on steroids. I mean, these people were mad as hell and right in front of the thing and, singing songs and beating drums and all kinds. I mean, it was awesome. And I got out there and it inspired me because it's, what, everybody think, Trump won by so much. He won. But you had the Democrat votes up and the people that didn't vote up is way more than voted for Trump. And since then, his appeal has only eroded. He's way in the minority now. And so I have hope for that. The data center backlash. You go on any social media platform and you see town halls and meetings from all over the country, people are pissed. And it's awesome to see that civic engagement. And it's hey, let me tell you about health insurance. Hey, let me tell you about school. Take this energy to all these other issues. And there are data centers getting stopped. We see that every day. The one in Nashville that was going to be built right next to the zoo got stopped. So people have power. Think of again, the backlash that's coming for the flock cameras. Again, that was one that I had kind of, direct correlation to for speaking about that. And then just think of this summer. Home health aides that being part of your family members, that was supposed to be stripped away, but the people spoke out. And it wasn't. Injection wells up kind of in northeast Ohio. There were a few that were turned down. The flock cameras. The EPA was going to let data centers discharge their wastewater into freshwater sources. Overwhelming, response. Hey, we're not doing this anymore. Those were all wins. Those all give me hope that, hey, if you really come alive and you email and raise a stink, you're as disastrous as your Republican politicians are, at some point they do have to listen to you. And that's all given me hope. The people of Ohio have given me hope. Think of this, ladies. Ohio is still standing. For 16 years, the Republican Party has tried to do everything to knock us down and beat us down and put us into elimination. And yeah, we got a bloody nose and 2 black eyes and we're up against the ropes, but we're still standing. They've given us their best shot for the last 16 years. They haven't knocked us down. And that gives me hope every day that we can fight back and take control.
I love that
so much. Honestly, I can tell you're a coach because I just feel so amped up.
I'm like tapped. I'm like ready. I'm like,
yes, I'm so ready to go. And I'm so ready for you to win your election. Please tell us how folks can help you.
So strongwithscott.com. Again, strong strength and conditioning coach, was a national championship powerlifter. So strongwithscott.com. Sign up to volunteer or at least get our newsletter, spread the word. We got into the election, like I mentioned, really late. I wasn't certified until June 16th. So we're just at like 2 months. So following on social media, spreading the word, like, share, whatever, getting that message out. And then again, if you have $5 or $10, I would certainly take it. There are races that are much closer that, hey, focus on those, spend the money on those. But again, you got $5 and say, hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. I would certainly appreciate it. But yeah, check us out, strongwithscott.com. Follow us, Strong with Scott Ohio on Instagram, Strong with Scott on Facebook, and no Twitter because forget that.
Right, exactly. Love that. Yeah. We will have all of that linked in the show notes as always. We'll be posting with you when this episode releases as well. Scott, once again, just thank you for running. Thank you for all you do. And thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thank you, ladies, so much. And again, you ladies give me inspiration and hope as well for bringing these great candidates on and giving us a voice and for fighting back and standing up and doing something.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Our second interview today is with Laura Sirot, and she is running for State Senate in District 31, which includes Worcester, New Philadelphia, and Zanesville, and parts of Massillon and Cambridge. She lives in Worcester with her husband, Pete, and their 2 sons. She is a professor of biology at the College of Worcester and has worked and lived in Worcester for the past 16 years. Her research mainly relates to understanding the reproductive biology of insect vectors on human pathogens and agricultural pests. Laura is very involved in her local community in the areas of children and family services, sustainability, animal rescue, and science communication. She is co-founder and co-coordinator of the Worcester Science Cafe, now in its 14th year, which is a monthly forum for discussing science-related issues of public interest. She has been a foster parent for Wayne County Children's Services and adopted a child through foster care. She continues to serve Wayne County Children's Services as a board member and through mentoring families and children. She has created programs for local animal rescue agencies, such as the K9 Coach Program, where she trains students to work with recent adopters of dogs on common behavioral issues to decrease the number of returned dogs. She is very passionate about making Ohio and the world a safer place for current and future generations. And let me tell you, that comes through clear as day in her interview. Laura was lovely to talk to and just a really unique background. And that passion is there. She really wants to help Ohio in any way she can. And so we're excited for you to listen to this interview.
Hi, Laura. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Gosh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. We're excited to have you. So as we heard in your bio, you are not a career politician running for office.
Yeah.
How does thinking like a scientist, teaching young adults and raising kids of your own shape how you see challenges facing all of our communities here in Ohio? And what ultimately led you to run for Ohio Senate District 31?
Yeah, that is a big couple of questions there.
It is. No pressure or anything. Let's start it off good.
A lot of it came from, so I decided when I was 20 that I was going to build my family through adoption. I felt then, and I still do now, that adults are responsible for taking care of children in need. And so we had one biological son who's 19 now. And when he was 3, my husband and I moved to Worcester and we decided to build our family through adoption. And we went through Wayne County Children's Services. And at that time, they required you to become a foster family first or to go through foster training. And I don't know if you know, but there's this huge need for foster families across Ohio right now. And it was the same then. And so we thought, well, if there's a huge need for foster families, maybe we should foster and not just adopt right away. And so we started doing that. And let me think, we had several foster kids. We mostly did what's called respite care, where you take kids for a few days or a few weeks or a month. And when we were doing that, we just had a lot of kids, of course, who had been through trauma and needed reassurance. And I always think of this story because I think it really inspired why I want to run. There was one kid who couldn't sleep at night. He just couldn't fall asleep. He didn't feel safe. And so every night I would go into his room and I would say, "What is my job?" And he'd say, "To keep me safe." And I said, "Am I doing a good job?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Then you know that you can go to sleep tonight and I'm going to keep you safe." And what I just feel is that our current elected officials aren't keeping our kids safe. They're not building a safe future for young people to come into this world. And I study animal behavior. And so I always say, as a mom, I'm a mama bear. If you're not going to protect the kids, you better get out of my way while I do it. And I think that's really what finally pushed me over the edge. Like, this can't go on any longer. So that was going on in my life. And then I got an email from an organization that's called 314.org. And what they do is to try to recruit and help get elected Democrats who have a scientific background. And so an email was bouncing around the scientists in Worcester that said, "We're looking for a scientist to run for local office." And I didn't know that much about local office, but I just wrote back to them and I said, "Oh, I don't want to run for local office. I just want to be governor," is what I wrote to them in 2020. And my friend's like, "Yeah, go big or go home, Laura." So I was like, "Yep." Like things. And I just thought, I mean, I really respect and am so grateful, especially now that I know a lot more about local government, of the people who are serving in those roles. But at that time, I was a little naive and just thought, oh my gosh, I would be in the super minority. What could I get done? It would be so frustrating and it would just feel like a waste of my time. And so that's sort of how I was feeling. So I thought they would just throw away the email and it would be the end of that. Instead, they wrote back right away. They said, "Great, let's talk about what it would look like for you to run for governor." So this was in 2023 before anyone else had declared for 26, because that's how I work. And so we talked it through, and then they talked to me through what it would look like to run for like state legislature. And they pointed out to me that no one had run against the person who I'm currently running against. So our current state senator had not had any opposition, no primary opponent and no general opponent. And so people in our district had no choice of who was representing them in Columbus. And the choice, as you know, is so important because the state legislature, it helps to make the laws, it helps to make the budget, helps to make the voting districts, both federal and state. And so it seemed I was starting to understand how important it was. And then I had this great opportunity where I went to the State House Day for the League of Women Voters. And at that event, it was still in 23, John Patterson was speaking. And do you know John Patterson? So he was one of the co-authors of the Fair School Funding Plan, one of the initiators. So it's the Patterson Cup, and he's the Patterson of that. And he was talking about vouchers before most people were talking about vouchers, and just, like how they came up with their formula to fully fund schools fairly across Ohio so that every student can thrive and we can have the excellent education that Ohio is known for. And he had me on the edge of my seat. And I have to say, it wasn't a topic I was like super duper interested in, but just his way of speaking blew me away. So I wrote to him and I said, "Hey, I'm running for office." I didn't tell him which one because that was still when I was running for governor in my mind. And I said, "Would you mind meeting up? I'd love to talk to you about your, or oration skills," I guess is oratory skills, and which I clearly am still working on, as you can see. But
we all are. It's fine.
Anyway, so he said, sure. And he met up and I talked to him and I said, I want to run for governor. And he didn't laugh me out of a restaurant we were in. I think we were at a Bob Evans in Lodi. And he said, "Well, have you considered state legislature?" And so this was the second time, probably the third or fourth, honestly, because other people had said it, but I wasn't really paying attention. And he said, "Have you considered?" And I said, "Yep, I considered it." And I decided it's not for me. It just would be frustrating to not get anything done. And he said, "Well, pardon me, but, I was in the state legislature for 8 years and I feel like I got something important done." And I felt so embarrassed, like, "Of course you did." And he said, me, it was so nice. He said, "I think you can make a great stateswoman. You are very diplomatic. I think you can see who your partners are across the aisle," and just like he did with the Patterson Cup, and really get shit done, which is what I want to do. And so that was a really long answer to your question about how I decided to run. And then you asked also about like how being a scientist and teaching young adults and being a mom, all those things kind of tie into it. Yes to all of that. So as a scientist, I study pests that cause harm to humans. And the joke is that makes me very well qualified to be in the state legislature.
Make some snarky joke about it. Yeah. I was going to say, so you know how to deal with Republicans in Ohio. Okay.
So my students and I, we study mosquitoes that transmit pathogens to humans, and we study agricultural pests that destroy crops. So those are the two areas we work on. But we're faced with new problems all the time, like insects developing evolving resistance to pesticides, for example. So how do we address that? And the way we address these problems is first finding out what's already known, right? Going out, finding out what's working and what's not working. So you're not reinventing the wheel all the time or making the same mistakes other people have made. So find out already that information, collect data, talk to people who have different expertise than your own, and then talk to the people who are going to be impacted by your potential solutions. And that's something that my students taught me because I've developed several programs at the college for students. And for one of them, the students came to talk to us and they said, don't plan for us without talking to us. And I've always held that in my head of you have to talk to the stakeholders before you decide on potential solutions. So I imagine myself that I would do the same thing as a legislator, right? Is that you collect data, you find out models of what's working and what people tried that didn't work. You talk to people with very diverse lived experiences and especially with different perspectives than your own. And then you talk to the people who are going to be impacted by these decisions to really understand it. And just as an example, I've been talking to mayors across my district. And one thing I keep hearing is that they wish that the state legislators would talk to them more about, like, they think they're doing good things for the local communities and sometimes they don't understand the impacts. So it's that same type of thing, having really open communication, listening to people, and then bringing it all together to make decisions and create change. And then with parenting, I just say, like as a mom, it's like not second nature, it's first nature. It's like your job to be hyper aware of potential problems, right? Like, and to nip them in the bud before they happen. And so I think as a state senator, I would have the intuition of a mother to detect problems and then the know-how as a scientist in how to address them.
That is seriously such a breath of fresh air. What your students told you, don't plan for us without talking to, like, all of the Republicans in our legislature right now don't do that. And, maybe some other folks on the other side too. Like, yes. I think that is such an important thing and something we keep running into. We keep having folks who aren't experts on a certain type of policy or, right. area making policies for so many people that directly affect their lives. So I just love it. It seems like common sense, but I love that you share that example of having to be told in your career too. Like, hey, let's maybe like talk to folks that this is going to be directly affecting. Right. I think that's unfortunately, it's a breath of fresh air with, with kids.
Yeah, we see it in pest management all the time because like I work on this technique that's supposed to be environmentally friendly, species specific. It's called the sterile insect technique, except for it involves dropping millions of male mosquitoes in a community, right? Like in the communities, and the males won't hurt you. Like it's not harmful, but it's shocking, right? Yeah. And that's to control the population. It's only the females that bite, but you have to work with the communities or else you've failed already.
Yeah. So it is no secret to us, you or our audience, that Ohio is quite gerrymandered. And the district that you're running for, District 31, includes 5 different counties that span northeast to southeast Ohio and slices 2 of the counties in 2 different districts and yada, yada, yada. It is the definition of gerrymandering. So what would impartial citizen-led redistricting actually look like in practice? And what's your path to getting it passed once you're in the Senate?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's crazy. I just drove from Zanesville to Worcester. Driving through my district takes 3 hours to drive through. And I'm often, like several times I've been in all 5 counties in one day. So it's a lot. It's a lot of miles and it's a lot on the body just to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so
gas is expensive.
Gas is expensive. Yeah. And I was actually the Wayne County organizer for the Citizens Not Politicians ballot. So I was really involved in that and
Very cool.
really feel very strongly about it. And as you know, the current state of affairs, it's crazy. It's literally the politicians picking their voters rather than the voters picking their elected officials. And I always say, as I'm talking to people, because my district's been gerrymandered to be mostly Republican and I'm running as a Democrat, but I always say to people, you're a boss who's hiring. You're hiring. So every voter in this district, you're hiring someone. You're hiring for your state representatives, your state senator, your House representative. And you should look carefully. And usually if you were hiring someone, you'd look at the full picture, not just one aspect of them, not a D or an R. And so that's a whole other issue, but that's not what you asked about. So anyway, it's a very important issue. And obviously the districting right now, the redistricting commission is made up of all elected officials. Out of the 7 elected officials on the commission, it's 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And so that's about 70% to 30%, but that's not representative of Ohioans. And so they've had a series of unconstitutional and over again, it's ridiculous. And so the citizen-led initiative, which also was very problematic in that it wasn't the Secretary of State decided to reword it for the ballot, right? So it was very confusing to people. So many people said they didn't understand what a yes meant and what a no meant for that. And that was obviously purposeful. So, but what it would have done and what I hope it will do when it is passed properly is to make several important changes. And one would be to ban partisan gerrymandering. So that just wouldn't be allowed. And it would require that the districts are representative of the voters in Ohio. And the way they would accomplish that is by having the commission, instead of being made up of elected officials or recently retired elected officials, it would be all citizens on there, and it would be equally distributed across independents, Republicans, and Democrats, and some other folks as well on there. So it wouldn't be anyone who has a vested interest in the outcome of those districts, which is so important. And how are we going to do it? We have to break the supermajority. That's the only way we can do that. And I think that and tax reform are the 2 starting places for all the other changes that need to happen in Ohio.
Yeah. I mean, gerrymandering, we haven't talked about it as much with a lot of the state candidates running this year, but obviously we know how important it is and just the work that has to be done to fix it. And we need people in the legislature who are going to, for right now at least, they're the ones trying the maps, or we need Allison Russo in the Secretary of State seat. So, she's not doing the funny business that Frank LaRose was doing. So yeah, it's just such an important issue that really impacts everything else.
Yeah, so we need to get it back on the ballot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about school funding because we have to, because it's one of the biggest issues in Ohio that especially our state candidates would have an impact on. So as we know, Ohio ranks 42nd in the nation for school funding. The Fair School Funding Plan called for $3 billion in state funding over the last 2 years combined, but that state budget most recently only delivered $250 million. So for your district specifically, what would fully funding that plan mean for schools in Wayne, Tuscarawas, and just the rest of District 31?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that includes Muskegum County and part of Guernsey and part of Stark. And first and foremost, fully funding it would mean that every kid would get their needs met, their educational needs met. And it's important because each community has different needs, right? And so what we need in Worcester is going to be different from what New Philadelphia needs, or Zanesville or Denison, like the small townships as well. And so it's very different. And the needs in terms of staffing, in terms of the student needs, in terms of the infrastructure, all those things. And so what the Fair School Funding Plan does is really looks at the needs. What are the costs, the actual costs in each school district of educating a student in that district? What is that district's ability to pay? And then gives the state share of that. And that's what the state is not paying their fair share. And it has all these downstream terrible impacts, right, that we're seeing. And so if that was just funded, it could clear up so many things. And you'll hear from my opponent, for example, that we're giving more funding than ever to public education, but it's bullshit, right? Because it's not accounting for inflation. It's not accounting for the increased special needs. It's not accounting for all those unfunded mandates that we now have in school systems. So it's really, really disingenuous for them to say that. And the impact of not funding it. So I've been talking to superintendents in my district, and they're having to make terrible choices, right? And so they have to say, do we increase class sizes or reduce programming? Do we delay purchasing and upgrading things? Do we fix and repair our classrooms? And so, for example, our very, very beloved elementary school that my kids went to called Cornerstone. I don't know if you knew it when you lived in Orville, but it used to be Worcester's High School, and it's very, very beloved, but it is crumbling. It's been crumbling since my 19-year-old was there. The district does not have enough money to rebuild that. The community and alums have such a soft place in their heart, warm place, I guess, in their heart for it. We want it to stand, but we can't have kids in there anymore. And so next year, we're moving kids out of there, but we don't have funding to build new buildings, right? And so we've tried to get a levy passed. Similar things are happening in New Philadelphia, for example, and it is pitting neighbor against neighbor. It is so awful to tear our families apart this way just because the state has decided to be greedy and give money other places, which we could discuss later. But yeah, and we can't attract talented. We have great staff, but we could be attracting more talent. We could be paying our staff properly to retain our great staff members, all sorts of things. But in Worcester, we're moving our kids to modular classrooms. And that's not something anybody wants, right? And because we can't keep them in Cornerstone and we can't afford to build more buildings. And what's happening is the state's not paying their share. And so the disproportionate amount of it has to be paid by local communities. It's not covered by property taxes, which I know we'll talk about more. Even those are super high, but that still doesn't cover it because the schools aren't getting enough from that. And so we try to do levies, and then older people sometimes, for example, some who just moved into this community and never had kids in this community are like, why should I be paying for the public schools? And you can understand that, especially with the really high property taxes, that's a valid viewpoint. But, especially why should I be paying even more for a levy? But it's all coming down to the state not doing their part in it. And so what it would mean if it was actually funded is that we could do the great work of having excellent education and serving the needs of each of our students. And we know there's more and more special needs that are coming up with our students, and we could address those if we had the fair school funding fully funded the way it should be. It public education really was the idea of Ohio, and to sure everybody had a level playing field. My siblings, so I grew up in Connecticut, but my family lived in Ohio before we moved there. And then I moved back, and my two siblings were born here in the 60s. And, my parents moved here because it had a great education system, and so it's sad. And we really, all the pieces are there. It just has to be the will, right? All we need is will to make it happen. All the pieces are there.
Yeah, how the legislature is currently acting is unconstitutional. They're unconstitutionally underfunding our public schools. It's so blatant. The fix is right there. So
fix is right there. And we talk about how people, young people don't want to build their lives here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why would you? What do you look for if you're planning to have kids? The school district, right? You want to move into a good school district, and what happens if there are none left?
Yeah, absolutely. So you alluded a bit to property taxes. So we're going to go there. Okay. Ohio has the 8th highest property taxes in the country. And you have talked about corporations getting valuation reductions while homeowners get squeezed. So what's your approach to giving relief to homeowners without getting the local services that are very needed that these taxes actually fund?
Yeah. And I'm hearing about this from people in my district all the time about affordability in general, but then specifically in terms of property taxes, what I hear is, but I own my house and I can't afford to live in it. People have paid their house off and they thought that was enough. And now some of them have $10,000 tax bills or whatever, it's really become terrible. And it's shot up in the last 6 years or so since COVID. Sorry, there's Luna. And she's been cuddling behind me this whole time. But hi, did you want to say hi, sweetie?
Hi, Luna.
But yeah, so it shot up, and people thought that, there was sort of the COVID bubble, and that after that it was just sort of a weird, crazy, all the crazy things that happened during COVID, effect on the housing market that made it so the valuations of properties was going up. Because part of it is that the property tax rate is really high, but separate from that, the valuation of properties is going up. And so how much you owe is going up. So it's two things going on at the same time. But that didn't happen. It didn't go back down after COVID, right? And so the valuations keep going higher. So I think the approach would be you have to do two things. One is you have to address that valuation increase that in some cases is not real. It's not reflective of the real value. And we can talk about that in a second. And then separate from that, you need to think about your different revenue streams. So in terms of the valuation, really, I think one thing that I'm hearing about from different leaders in the community is that there's investors, private investors who are buying houses and leaving them empty or driving up to drive up housing prices. And so it's like in Worcester, it's really hard. Like nobody can afford a home. They're like starter homes, right? $225,000. That's crazy. Right. And so in a lot of communities, people are just priced out of the market. But then the people who do own their houses have these inflated valuations too. And so their property taxes are going higher and higher. They didn't plan for this in their savings. They're older people who don't have additional income coming in. They're not able to retire. They have to move, like terrible things are happening. So one thing we have to do, I think, is to rein in that private investor strategy of buying up housing. That housing should be for people to live in. That needs to happen, and we can make those changes. And then the second thing is to look at the revenue streams, right? So Ohio's foregone a lot of potential tax revenue from two different sources. One is from big corporations, and the other is from people who make a ton of money, right? And so those are two places. And, having a flat income tax doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Across our whole history, it's usually that people pay to their ability to pay, right? That's what's fair. And so to me, a progressive tax makes a lot more sense where you would have the same income tax rate up to a certain amount of earning. And then if you earn above that, then it starts increasing your income tax rate so that you do pay a higher tax rate as you start earning more, but only on that income that's above that base rate. And then we need to start having corporations bring back more benefits to the community than what they take from the community. And so we see this in our district. For example, there's a pipeline that's gone into our district, and there was a certain amount of tax money that was supposed to come, and the local schools planned on that, having that tax base there. And now the company is fighting their valuation and saying, oh no, we're not really worth that much, so we shouldn't be paying that much in taxes. So I think corporations need to pay, and that's not even with the tax breaks that they got, right? That's just the things that they said they were pay, right? And we just heard the story recently about how these huge corporations were given 40 years tax breaks for data centers without much notification to the public about it. So I think if we can spread the burden of the property tax across everybody who owns property, actually here, it would lessen the burden on homeowners and farmers who are really carrying most of the burden of funding local communities, especially when the state, like we talked about earlier, is not paying their fair share. So that's one thing, increasing income tax revenue, and then changing this skyrocketing valuation increase that's happening.
Lori, yeah, thank you for walking us through that. I think you've nailed all the different pieces of what people are feeling. And the progressive income rate is just the most infuriating thing, because obviously that was done by Ohio Republicans to benefit the wealthiest. And it has just, to your point, decreased revenue for our state so much and caused so many problems that bubble up in so many areas, including property tax. Something I'm excited to talk to you about, because we don't get to ask a lot of people this type of question, is farming. So you kind of just mentioned farmers as you were talking through property tax, but farming has shaped kind of your district, for generations. And so you've been talking to farmers dealing with rising input costs, workforce shortages, and just tricky kind of things like succession planning. So what's one policy change you think would make the biggest difference for a family farm, kind of specifically in your district, trying to make it to the next generation?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. It's really important that they do get that attention, because they're really the backbone of our state, our economy, our country, and our world. We're not fed if we don't have farmers. It's no joke, right? So in Ohio, we have about 75 5,000 farms, most of which are family farms. And a lot of those have been multi-generational, like you said. And in addition to the concerns you mentioned, there's other things like really fluctuating weather conditions. So, for example, I was on a farm in Fredericksburg earlier this year, and they said that the maple syrup season was cut really short this year because they didn't have the right conditions for harvesting. The sap usually goes through March, and it ended at the end of February. So we have all these different weather conditions, and as well as the prices of the products they're selling keep fluctuating and really haven't increased at the rate that the input costs are increasing. So many of the farmers have to work off the farm. They're working the hardest job, right, of working on the farm from earlier in the morning to late at night. Plus they have off-farm jobs. And often that's to have health insurance. And so I think that one of the biggest things we can do is to provide health insurance for people who are working professionally as farmers. And to that, I would add childcare as well, because it's really important if you're farming that you have safe, reliable, affordable childcare. And that's true for everyone. But having a kid on a farm, there's so many dangerous things that can happen with kids, right? And so I think I would say health insurance is number one and childcare is right there, right behind it.
I love that so much. And I mean, I love that for everyone, not just farmers.
Exactly.
But I think that's such a great perspective, especially for your district. It's so important. And it's such a backbone that we don't often focus on specifically in Ohio, even though there is a lot of farmland. And we always get trolled online for all the farmland that's in Ohio and the cornfields and whatnot. But still, I feel like we don't focus enough on it, at least in my exposure to Ohio politics. So I love that.
I would invite any of your listeners, if they don't appreciate farmland, come visit me, reach out to me, and I'll take you on a tour. And it's the way these people are working, the way they take care of the land, their knowledge of the land. It's just incredible to me. So, and it just makes me so happy driving into Wayne County and seeing all the farms thriving.
Yeah, that is special. It's definitely something that's super important to Ohio and beyond. So we love ending our interviews with one question, and that is, what gives you hope right now?
It's one question. Do I have to give one answer? Can I give multiple?
Absolutely not. Give us all the hope, Laura.
I'll give you all the hope. First of all, the farmers, right? So I think Ohio has the potential. Sorry, Luna wants to get in on this too, right? Did you want to say something?
Luna has hope as well.
Luna has lots of hope. Okay. So I think Ohio has the potential to be an innovative leader for a sustainable future. That's my vision for Ohio. I think we have the farmers who know the land. We have the land, the richest soils in our country are here, right in my district. And we have the knowledge. We have all the colleges and universities and trade schools and the industry that wants to be here and affordable living. We have fresh water, fresh, clean water. We have beautiful parks. Like we have everything. And again, all we need is the will. And so get me in there and we can make this happen. So that's one thing. Second is I work with young people all the time. So I'm a college professor and I see how brilliant they are and how many creative ideas. And even in sort of this, what I would call a little depressing time of technology being such a huge part of people's lives, I get the opportunity as a college professor to watch these students grow from when they come in as 18 to when they leave as 22 and go out into the world so hopeful and filled with ideas to make the world a better place. What's depressing about it is that the opportunities aren't there for them to find meaningful work. So that's what we need to work on. And then I think the final thing is how the community comes together to help each other. And so just as an example, just on Sunday, I had two really meaningful experiences. The first one is a local barber shop invited me to come and spend the day with them earlier in the day. They were providing free school supplies and also free haircuts. So shout out to Global Grind Barbershop. So to children in our community. And I got there about 15 minutes before it started. It was packed with families and kids and it was like a party in there. And so just seeing how the community gives back and how people support, so local businesses support the community. And it goes both ways. Like one of our really beloved restaurants here, Farmer Boy, burnt down a few years ago, and just seeing how the community comes together in times of crisis. And similarly, you've probably heard about the flooding down in Perry County and Muskingum County going on right now. So it started last week and just the rain is not letting up. I literally drove from Zanesville today, but I went to Zanesville for the county fair on Sunday night, right from the barbershop to Zanesville. And we were there talking to people. It was the day the veterans were there. And so we were talking with a lot of veterans, and it started pouring again. And while we were there on Sunday night, the very storage facility that was being used for all the donated supplies that people had come together got flooded. So all those supplies got flooded. And yet people just are kind of pivoting and coming out. The National Guard is there, but the community is making this happen and I know Jared Christian, I think, have you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing his shirt.
Oh, great. Perfect. Yeah. So Jared was there. You should wear his shirt. He is awesome. And so we overlap in our districts. And so he was there digging and moving things and stuff, but just seeing community come together and just reminding myself. So people say, what gives you hope running in a district that's so gerrymandered? That's the other piece. Like, why in the world? Why not just leave it uncontested like it was before you came, right? And what gives me hope is that I think that elected officials took a very jaded gamble on our district, that what we have most in common is that people vote Republican. And what I've seen through now, I told you I started in 2023. So now through years of talking to people in my district, is what we have in common is that we care about our neighbors. We care about our land. We care about education, and we care about civil discourse. People want to return to being able to disagree and still do it respectfully and still care for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks are hungry for that. The old era of politics, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, it's fine to disagree. You don't have to hate each other for it.
Yeah.
And be mean. Yeah.
Laura, if folks are listening to this and they either live in your district or they want to help you in any way, shape, or form, how can they do that?
Thank you so much for asking. We would love it. The best way is to go to my website. So it's SIROTFOROHIO, sirotforohio.org. And then they can find various ways to donate if they'd like to donate. They can volunteer. We do a lot of sustainability efforts in our campaign. So one volunteer job is to thrift shirts. So my shirt that I'm wearing, we thrift every shirt. Every campaign shirt is different. I can show you. We also have our motto on the back, finding common ground to work for the common good.
So cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, Laura, say the motto again, because you were turned away from the mic when you said it. Yeah.
So our campaign slogan is finding common ground to work for the common good. And that's what's on the back of our shirt. And so every single shirt is different. I always feel like people can find the shirt that speaks to them. And we have dresses, and we have little kids shirts and sweatshirts, and we have our fall line, and it's fun. So one of the volunteer jobs is thrifting shirts. So lots of different things. We love people. I did a training course called Dirt Road Revival that's about running in rural districts. And it's really about communication. Their motto is that campaigning is community building. And that really resonated with me. So if you want to come and talk to your neighbors and other people, come out with us. We have a great time doing it. So
that's amazing, Laura. We know that you know this, but this interview is airing alongside Scott's interview, and both of you guys are running in very difficult districts. So I just want to thank you so much for running. We believe that no seat should go uncontested, and so thank you for the work you're doing. You know, it truly matters, and we have to be building just these relationships in this community in these more rural areas that have been really left behind by Democrats in the past. So thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for coming on the show today. And we are just excited to support you and watch you race to the finish line here in November.
And then become governor one day.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And of course, we'll be waiting for your governor bid. Yeah.
Yeah, after Dr. Acton's done. Thank you guys. Right back at you. You're amazing and just you're inspiring. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks so much, Laura.
You.